I'm Justin Preston. I'm here with J.G. Faulk. He is the student director, youth minister here at Greer First Baptist Church. And today we're going to discuss leadership. I've got a few questions here. What qualities would you say a church leader should possess in order to minister effectively?
Yeah. Obviously you start with godliness,
Right.
Fruit of the Spirit. But I'd say compassion is a big one that we don't see necessarily in the world today. Because you can lead people well, but without the compassion piece, it just kind of falls flat.
Right. What book or books have had the greatest impact on your understanding of leadership?
Yeah. So, Discipling by Mark Dever. It's a little book. I haven't read many books, and I have read even less twice, but that's on the list. So, he talks about like folding people into your life and helping them see Jesus through the everyday.
Sure.
And so I think, discipleship is leadership, right? And so, for me, I think that was a big one that kind of helped me form an idea of what leadership looks like in my life.
Right.
Be Our Guest is also, it's a, I'm blanking on who wrote it. It's a Disney-based book about like hospitality and that kind of thing.
Sure.
I just think that plays such a big role in leadership, right?
Yeah.
The Bible says Jesus came not to be served, but to serve.
Right.
And so service and the way we interact with other people is just super important for leadership. So
Absolutely. What are some of the most important nuts and bolt lessons that you can give me? Something practical, maybe the most important lesson you've learned throughout your role as a leader.
Yeah. I would say stay a learner, stay learning, like always be growing yourself.
Sure.
And know what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Right.
Because I think if you try and lead and train people in a way that you're not good at, then it's going to be ineffective and kind of a waste of time. So.
Right. Good word. How would you separate yourself effectively from work and rest? Or how do you do that?
Sure. Not well. It's tough. The world we live in, I think, as well as anybody, it's that phone can ding at any minute, and somebody can always need you for something, and we are just constantly plugged into anything happening anywhere in the world.
Right.
And so it's tough. It's really hard to kind of separate and turn things off. And John Mark Comer has a book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's a really good one as well. I've read a couple times, and he talks about that idea of like Sabbath and turning things off and
being intentional.
Yeah. So a lot, and this is kind of one of the things he says in the book. Sometimes today we think rest looks like lay on the couch for 8 hours watching TV.
Right.
And sometimes it might, but I think often it looks more like being in nature and turning your phone off, and maybe being at home, turn your phone off, but unplugging a little bit, and just kind of being intentional about thinking about God's goodness in your life, and just really pausing to think about everything that's going on, or maybe nothing at all. Just not think about something. But just that intentional break is so important.
Good. What would you say your main goals in leadership are?
Yeah. For me, it's just to make people more like Jesus.
Right.
As a youth pastor, I lead students. And so my goal is that by the time they graduate high school, they look more like Jesus than when they came in 6th grade.
Right.
So
that's a pretty good goal. Do you have a plan to intentionally develop yourself as a leader?
Not as well as I should. There are pieces that I try to do and listen to podcasts and read books and surround myself with good leaders, that kind of thing. But there's not necessarily like a I work out Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, at 8 a.m. that kind of thing.
No sort of structured regimen, you would say.
Sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How about a plan to intentionally develop others into leaders?
So that's more intentional than my personal plan,
Right.
I would say. We kind of have a pipeline of young adults and even older adults too, but people that I kind of recruit to help me lead students
Right.
here at church. And so it involves some training and some accountability and just kind of checking in on people and that kind of thing.
Sure.
But again, it probably could be more intentional.
Gotcha. Describe your process for developing a vision and mission for your organization.
Yeah. So every organization is different. Church is going to be different from nonprofit from
Right.
for-profit. I guess is what you call other
Right,
companies.
right.
But even within churches and even within ministries in the same church, I think God's working in each of them differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's okay. Let's look at what is the vision of our church, because our student ministry needs to align with the vision of our church first and foremost, and then look to other student ministries, other churches that have a similar heart,
Right.
and just kind of what's their language? How do they say this? What does that look like for them? Processes, talking to peers, other people in leadership in various areas.
Right.
That's kind of how I go about at least putting words to the vision.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good. How do you admit and fix a problem in your leadership?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Hopefully with grace.
Yeah.
I think there are times, especially as a leader, you just have to kind of own it when there's a
Right.
mistake or a ball that gets dropped, and sometimes it looks like a person under you making a mistake that you still have to take the fall for,
Right.
because that's being a leader,
Right.
So I think you have to do that with grace, but a leader doesn't shuck responsibility to somebody else.
Sure.
So
Good. If you could go back, what would you do differently? Or what would you want to go back and change if you could?
yeah. I would probably go back and say, hey, people believe in you more than you believe in yourself.
Right.
Be a little more confident in your leadership.
Sure.
Paul tells Timothy not to let people look down on him because he's young.
Right.
And I know that, but still a lot of the time, I'm in my late 20s now, but early 20s, it was kind of like, who put me in charge of this? And I still think that, but now it's like, no, you're in charge, be a leader.
Right.
So I'd probably go back earlier and say, hey, be confident in where the Lord's put you and the responsibility He's given you. So
Good. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
yeah.